The alien princess hid behind me, and every guard in the throne room froze. Elias Carter had never seen anything like the Urundari capital. From the moment his starship glided above the sprawling city, he could see the towers gleaming under the twin suns. Each building floated slightly above the ground, connected by streams of light that pulsed like veins. The city itself seemed alive, humming with energy that no human technology could replicate. Despite the beauty, there was an undercurrent of tension, one that prickled at his senses the moment he stepped onto the landing platform. The invitation had been a surprise. Humanity, until now considered a minor species by the Galactic Council, was being given the rare chance to negotiate directly with the Urundari. The alien race was known for its strict codes, sharp intellect, and political cunning. One wrong word or gesture could ruin relations before they began. Elias had been chosen not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because he was calm under pressure and could think clearly when others might panic. It was a heavy responsibility, but one he had trained his whole life for. The palace gates opened before him, revealing a courtyard filled with alien flora that glowed softly in the sunlight. The plants shifted and moved slightly as if sensing his presence. Guards dressed in sleek armor that seemed molded from liquid metal lined the paths. Each carried a weapon that hummed with a faint energy. Elias felt the eyes of the Urundari on him, cold and assessing, and he straightened his shoulders. He had to appear confident. He had to appear capable. A messenger stepped forward, bowing slightly. In a voice smooth and musical, the alien said, "Welcome, human. The princess awaits in the throne room." Elias nodded, his voice steady even though his heart raced. "Thank you. Lead the way." The corridors inside the palace were wider than any human hallway he had seen, walls shimmering with shifting colors that seemed to respond to footsteps. The floor floated slightly above the ground, and Elias had to adjust his stride to keep steady. He noticed small drones gliding along invisible tracks, scanning him carefully but not with hostility. The palace was alive, observing everything, yet it was also silent in a way that made him hyper-aware of every sound he made. Finally, they reached the throne room. The doors were massive, carved from a crystal-like substance that refracted the sunlight into dazzling patterns. As they opened, Elias stepped into a vast hall that stretched farther than his eyes could comfortably take in. High above, a dome ceiling displayed a projection of the galaxy, each star twinkling with startling realism. The walls were lined with statues of past rulers, their expressions serene yet formidable. And there she was, Princess Lyra. She stood tall on the dais at the far end, her posture perfect, her gaze sharp and clear. Her attire shimmered in hues Elias had no names for, flowing like liquid yet structured like armor. She exuded grace and authority, every movement measured, every gesture commanding attention. Elias felt a pang of nervousness. The stories of the princess's intelligence and cunning were not exaggerated. She was more imposing than any human leader he had ever met. The guards around her, their eyes locked on him, shifted slightly, their weapons at the ready. Elias could feel the tension thick in the air. He knew from intelligence reports that these were not ordinary palace guards. They were elite, trained to respond to any threat immediately. One wrong move and the situation could escalate in seconds. Elias stepped forward, hands visible, maintaining a calm demeanor. "Princess Lyra," he said, bowing slightly as a gesture of respect. "I am Elias Carter, representing humanity." For a moment, nothing happened. Then something completely unexpected occurred. Lyra moved backward, stepping directly behind him. Her presence was immediate, almost tangible. Elias froze, unsure of what to do. The princess, the one person everyone in the room treated with absolute respect, had hidden behind him. The guards stopped moving, their weapons still raised, but hesitation flickered across their faces. Murmurs spread like wildfire through the room. Every pair of eyes now focused on Elias. Why would the princess, trained in diplomacy and strategy, seek protection from a human? Elias felt his pulse quicken, but he knew he had to remain steady. He took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to exude calmness even though his mind raced. He could feel the weight of the princess behind him, a subtle warmth and trust that he had not expected. That small gesture told him more than words ever could. She believed he could keep her safe. "Stand still," Lyra whispered softly, her voice barely audible to him alone. There was a hint of urgency but also a strange calmness. "They are not here to honor me." Elia's eyes flicked to the guards. He noticed now the slight hesitations, the whispered signals, the shifting stances. Something was wrong. These were not simple ceremonial guards, they were loyal to someone else. Someone plotting against the princess. Elia's training kicked in. In human terms, this was a high-pressure negotiation under immediate threat. But it was more than that. It was life and death, and the lives of not just the princess, but potentially the entire political structure of the Urundari Empire could hinge on his next decisions. He took a step forward, projecting authority and calm. "I mean no harm," he said aloud, loud enough for the guards to hear. His voice was firm, steady, and filled with confidence that he did not entirely feel. "I am here only as a guest of the princess and as a representative of humanity." The guards froze, unsure how to respond. The room was heavy with anticipation, every second stretching into eternity. Elias felt the pressure like a physical force, yet he also sensed Lyra's trust, her belief that he could handle this. It was a responsibility he could not take lightly. He subtly shifted his stance to place himself slightly in front of her, not aggressively, but as a natural shield. It was a simple human gesture, instinctive, but it seemed to confuse the guards further. They were used to loyalty and protocol, not improvisation from someone outside their society. A whisper reached him. "You must move carefully. One wrong step and it will end badly." It was Lyra, close to his ear, yet calm and measured. He nodded subtly. "Understood." The guards moved again, small, careful steps, as though testing him. Elias noticed patterns in their movements, slight signals that revealed their loyalties. He realized they were watching each other as much as him, waiting for someone else to act first. He needed to remain passive enough to avoid triggering aggression but confident enough to prevent the princess from being seized. Time seemed to stretch. Every breath, every subtle shift in weight mattered. The audience in the throne room, ambassadors, officials, and other nobles, watched silently, fascinated by the strange human who could hold the attention of an alien princess and freeze elite guards in their tracks. Then Lyra spoke again, this time more firmly, but still soft. "They believe I am alone. They underestimate the human presence." Her words were almost teasing, but they carried an edge of strategy. Elias realized that she had calculated this moment perfectly. She had chosen him, not randomly, but because she knew that humans had a certain unpredictability, a quality that could tilt power balances. Elias felt a surge of pride and fear simultaneously. He understood now that this was not just about personal safety. It was a lesson in diplomacy, a test of humanity's worth in the eyes of an alien empire. One wrong word, one false movement, could trigger a massacre or a political disaster. As the silence stretched, Elias carefully mirrored her confidence. His human training in negotiation, observation, and psychology kicked in. He maintained eye contact with the nearest guard, relaxed his shoulders and breathed slowly. The slight adjustments made him appear larger, more deliberate, and more in control. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a senior guard stepped forward cautiously. His weapon lowered slightly, eyes scanning Elias, scanning Lyra, and scanning the room for reactions. The tension remained, but the immediate threat seemed to stabilize. Lyra exhaled quietly behind him, the smallest trace of relief crossing her features. Elias realized she had been testing him, assessing whether humans could be more than fragile, naive observers in a galaxy dominated by advanced civilizations. He straightened fully, offering a calm, reassuring nod toward her. For the first time, he felt a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. The guards, still wary, began to relax fractionally, their hesitation giving the audience a clear sign that this human might be more capable than anyone had imagined. In that moment, Elias understood something fundamental. Humans were not the most technologically advanced species. They were not the most physically powerful, but they possessed adaptability, quick thinking, and courage that could turn the tide in situations where rigid rules and predictability failed. And as Princess Lyra remained hidden behind him, relying on his presence, Elias felt the weight of possibility. Perhaps humanity had a role far greater than anyone had imagined. Perhaps in the heart of this alien empire, a human could shift the course of events in ways no one else could. He took a steady breath, feeling the warmth of her presence, and prepared for whatever came next. The throne room was no longer just a ceremonial space. It had become a stage where a human and a princess stood against the currents of power, intrigue, and danger. And in that moment, Elias Carter understood that the future of alliances, and perhaps the survival of the princess, rested on his actions. The throne room still hummed with tension, but now Elias felt a growing clarity. He realized that Princess Lyra's decision to hide behind him was not a whim, it was a calculated move, a subtle message that she trusted him above all others in the room. He turned slightly, careful not to startle her, and whispered back, "Who are they? Why are they after you?" Lyra's eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the frozen guards. She exhaled slowly, almost silently, as if preparing herself to share a secret that could change everything. "They are my own people," she said quietly. "Not all of them, but a faction within the palace has decided my life is worth more as a bargaining tool than as a sovereign. They would remove me to control the throne, to bend the empire to their will." Elias felt a chill despite the warmth of the throne room. Betrayal from within the royal family was a danger few outsiders ever saw, yet it was terrifyingly real now. The guards' hesitation made sense. They were trained to follow orders, but some of them were loyal to this hidden faction, waiting for the moment to strike. He absorbed the weight of her words. A princess hiding behind a human envoy. In any human society, this would be unimaginable. But here, on an alien world with a culture far older and more complex than his own, it made sense that trust could be rare and alliances fragile. Elias instinctively moved slightly in front of her, creating a small barrier without appearing aggressive. Lyra's hand brushed against his arm, a gesture that was not intimate but full of trust. "Stay calm," she said. "If they see fear, they will act. We must appear in control." Elias nodded, drawing on every ounce of training he had. He understood that calmness was as powerful a weapon as any blaster. He straightened his shoulders, leveled his gaze at the nearest guard, and spoke in a measured voice. "We are here under your laws to honor the princess and discuss matters of peace. We will not provoke conflict, but any aggression will be noticed by all present." The words seemed to ripple through the room. The guards stiffened, some relaxing slightly, others shifting uneasily. Elias realized that in a room like this, presence mattered more than size or weaponry. His human confidence, steady and unpredictable to the Urundari, was a subtle yet potent force. Lyra spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have only a few moments to act. You must follow my lead when the time comes." Her tone was urgent but controlled, showing the discipline of someone trained for centuries in etiquette, strategy, and survival. Before Elias could ask what she meant, the senior guard, the one who had initially stepped forward, made a subtle gesture with his hand. It was almost imperceptible, but Elias noticed it. The guards were signaling each other, planning an approach. It became clear. The threat was immediate. Elias' heart raced, but his mind focused. This was no longer a diplomatic meeting. It was a live negotiation for life. He glanced down at Lyra, who seemed perfectly calm despite the danger. Her calmness gave him strength, a reminder that sometimes courage was not loud but steady and resolute. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed through the chamber. One of the guards had knocked his weapon against the floor accidentally, and in that moment the tension snapped. The faction loyal to the hidden conspirators sprang into action, but Elias was ready. Using a combination of instinct and observation, he stepped slightly to the side, guiding Lyra behind a structural pillar that shimmered with protective energy. It was not cover in the traditional sense. The energy field distorted light and made movement difficult to track. For humans, it was unfamiliar, but Elias quickly adjusted. He understood shadows and angles, and in that split second, he used them to shield both himself and the princess. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in recognition of his quick thinking. She whispered, "You move with certainty." That is rare among humans. Elias offered a small, tight-lipped smile. "I learn fast when the stakes are high." The faction's guards advanced, their weapons glowing with lethal energy, but Elias noticed patterns in their movements. They expected predictable responses, but humans often acted in ways that could not be anticipated. He used small, deliberate shifts to confuse them, creating hesitation and buying precious seconds. As they moved deeper into the throne room, Elias' mind raced with calculations. Each decision had consequences. One wrong move could provoke a lethal strike, and the entire political structure of the palace could collapse. Yet he found that human intuition, his ability to improvise, gave him an advantage even here, in an alien world filled with technology and ritual that he barely understood. Lyra stayed close behind him, whispering guidance. "Turn left at the next archway. It will lead to a secondary corridor. Few know it exists." Her knowledge of the palace was vast, yet she trusted him to follow without hesitation. Elias felt the subtle thrill of partnership, an unspoken bond forming between human and alien princess under extreme circumstances. They slipped into the corridor, the sound of their footsteps masked by the echoing of the main chamber. Elias noticed the walls of the corridor pulsated with soft energy, reacting to their presence. It was disorienting, but he adapted quickly, keeping his movements deliberate and measured. Every step felt like walking a tightrope between diplomacy and disaster. Lyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable to anyone else, but Elias could sense urgency beneath her calm exterior. "They will send more," she warned. "The faction will not stop until I am under their control. You must prepare yourself." Elias' jaw tightened. He was not a soldier trained for alien warfare, but he had survived countless training simulations and real-life crises on human colonies. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was action despite fear. He drew strength from that principle now. As they moved, Elias noticed subtle signs that Lyra's words were true. Holographic projections of guards shifted unnaturally, indicating surveillance and traps laid in advance. The faction was prepared, but so was the princess, and now so was he. At one point, a doorway loomed ahead, but Elias paused instinctively. The floor beneath it shimmered faintly, a warning he recognized from prior intelligence about palace security. He motioned for Lyra to stop. Her eyes met his and he saw a flicker of surprise. She had not expected hesitation. "It is safe," she said, but Elias shook his head subtly. "Something is wrong. Let me check first." He crouched slightly, scanning the doorway with human senses, noticing minute vibrations and shifts in light patterns. It was a trap, designed to trigger an alarm and expose their location. Carefully, he guided Lyra along an alternative route, one he judged safer based on instinct and observation. She followed without question, a small act that strengthened Elias' confidence. The unusual trust placed in him by someone of her stature was both humbling and motivating. He realized that this moment was not just about survival. It was also about proving humanity's value to a galaxy that often underestimated them. As they progressed, Lyra spoke quietly, explaining more about the political intrigue surrounding her life. "My father trusts few," she said. "Many believe he is weak, but he understands power differently. The faction sees my survival as a threat to their influence. They would rather remove me than risk losing control." Elias nodded, absorbing the information. He had been trained in human politics, but alien politics was a different dimension entirely, complex, layered, and ruthless. Yet the lesson was clear. Survival and strategy required adaptability, observation, and calm action under pressure. They reached a small alcove, hidden from immediate view, where the walls shimmered with a faint protective energy. Elias motioned for Lyra to pause, scanning the corridor ahead. The faint hum of the palace, energy fields, and distant footsteps of the faction's guards filled the silence, yet it was almost comforting compared to the deadly tension they had just navigated. "Do you always act like this?" Lyra asked softly, her tone a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Elias allowed himself a small smile, though his eyes never left the corridor. "When lives depend on it, yes. Instinct and observation are the best tools we humans have." Lyra nodded thoughtfully, her respect for him growing. "You are different from what I expected. Humans are unpredictable, but in ways that are useful, perhaps more than I realized." Elias felt a surge of pride but kept his focus. There was no time for celebration yet. The faction was still active, the palace still dangerous, and the throne room was still a potential trap. Survival depended on continued vigilance, careful movement, and the unique human combination of intuition and courage. They moved again, navigating the twisting corridors, the palace responding to their presence in subtle ways. Doors that should have been locked slid open slightly, energy fields adjusted to create safe passage, almost as if the building itself recognized their urgency. Elias noted the patterns and used them, guiding Lyra through paths few others could have discovered. Hours, or what felt like hours in the tense silence passed. They finally reached a small chamber, hidden deep within the palace. It was quiet, almost serene, a stark contrast to the dangerous corridors they had just traversed. Lyra exhaled, finally allowing herself a brief moment of relief. Elias studied her, noting how her posture relaxed slightly, her eyes losing some of the intensity they had held. "We have bought some time," he said softly, "but we must remain careful. They will continue searching." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You have already done more than I expected. Perhaps humans are capable of more than we have given them credit for." Elias smiled, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. The princess was alive, and he had earned her trust, a rare and valuable thing in a world governed by power, intrigue, and caution. Yet he also understood that the real challenge was just beginning. The hidden chamber offered a moment of respite, but Elias knew that action, not rest, would define the outcome. He could sense the threads of conspiracy stretching outward, reaching into every corner of the palace, and he understood that his human instincts and courage would be tested again and again. As he looked at Lyra, he felt a bond forming, subtle but powerful. In a galaxy where advanced technology and centuries of tradition often dominated, it was human qualities, courage, intuition, and calm under pressure, that could make the difference between survival and disaster. And in that moment, he understood the true meaning of being human, not just surviving, but shaping the outcome through intelligence, adaptability, and trust. Elias Carter could feel the tension tightening around them like a living thing. Even within the hidden chamber, far from the main corridors, the palace seemed aware of their presence. The air shimmered faintly with energy from the walls, and the soft hum of power fields created an almost tangible pressure that demanded attention. He glanced at Lyra, the princess's posture still rigid with control, yet her trust in him had grown. That trust was a delicate thing. He could feel its weight on his shoulders. "We can't stay here for long," Elias said quietly, scanning the room. The chamber was small, dimly lit, and offered only limited exits. "They will eventually figure out where we went. We need a plan." Lyra nodded, her sharp eyes narrowing. "There is a route from here that few know. It leads to the old archives and eventually to the servants' tunnels. From there, we could reach the outer gardens. They think those passages are sealed. I can get us out of the palace without being detected if we move quickly." Elias felt a mix of relief and caution. The corridors they had navigated so far had tested his instincts, and he knew the next phase would demand even more. "Lead the way," he said, adjusting his stance. His human body was not naturally suited for alien environments, but years of survival training had taught him to adapt quickly. Lyra led, moving silently, her movements precise and deliberate. Elias followed, matching her pace as they navigated the hidden passageways. The walls were smooth, glowing faintly, and occasionally shifting as though alive. He had never seen architecture respond to its occupants in such a direct way. Yet he trusted his instincts, reading the subtle cues in light and vibration to anticipate potential hazards. They reached a narrow stairway that spiraled downward, hidden behind a panel that seemed part of the wall itself. Lyra pressed a series of small symbols, and the panel slid open. Elias noticed the faint scent of energy in the air, something like ozone mixed with the palace's unique flora. "Careful," Lyra whispered. "Some of the sensors here are very sensitive. One misstep and alarms will trigger instantly." He stepped lightly, his weight distributed carefully. Human agility was different from the Urundari, but it had its own advantages. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability now worked in their favor. They descended the stairs in silence, the soft hum of the palace enveloping them. Halfway down, a faint vibration passed through the floor. Elias stopped instantly, sensing movement above. "They're close," he whispered. Lyra froze behind him, eyes wide. "The faction sent scouts. They will check these passages." Elias considered their options. The stairway offered little room for maneuver, but he quickly spotted a side alcove hidden in the wall. "There," he said softly, guiding Lyra into the alcove. The alcove shimmered faintly, almost invisible to anyone not paying close attention. They pressed themselves against the wall, holding their breath as two guards passed, scanning the hallway. Time stretched. Elias could feel his heart pounding, yet he remained steady. Humans had a remarkable capacity for focus under stress, and he drew on that skill now. The guards lingered longer than expected, their energy weapons humming faintly as they scanned the space. Then, with a subtle gesture, they moved on. Elias exhaled quietly, and Lyra gave him a small nod of approval. "You think like a human," she said softly. "Quick, precise, adaptable. Most of my own guards would have panicked or made mistakes by now." He allowed himself a small smile, but it was fleeting. "We're not safe yet. Stay close." He led the way again, carefully observing the walls and floors for any signs of surveillance. Every step was deliberate. Every pause was measured. They emerged into a long corridor lined with doors, most of which were locked or reinforced with energy barriers. Elias noticed subtle signs of tampering, faint scratches and marks that indicated others had passed through recently. The faction was thorough, and their reach extended further than he had anticipated. Lyra moved toward a door at the far end, placing her hand on a small control panel. The door slid open silently, revealing a narrow tunnel lined with glowing veins of energy. "The servants' tunnels," she whispered. "Few know these exist. They lead to the gardens near the outer walls. From there, we can reach a transport that will take us off the palace grounds." Elias followed, noting the way the tunnel bent and narrowed. The walls seemed alive, reacting to their passage with subtle shifts in light and pressure. Humans often relied on intuition in unfamiliar environments, and Elias' instincts guided him. allowing him to anticipate the tunnel's changes and adjust his movements. They walked in silence for several minutes, the only sound the soft hum of energy and their careful footsteps. Then Lyra stopped abruptly. Elias nearly collided with her. She pressed her finger to her lips and pointed to a faint vibration pattern in the tunnel floor. Sensors. Not visible, but detectable to someone who paid attention. He nodded, lowering his body slightly and moving with measured steps. Humans were small and adaptable in situations that required precision. He guided Lyra through the tunnel, carefully avoiding the sensors. The princess's confidence in him seemed to grow with each successful maneuver. Finally, they reached a section of the tunnel that opened into a hidden chamber beneath the palace gardens. Elias looked up through a grate and saw the night sky above, dotted with stars. The gardens were below, filled with bioluminescent plants and flowing water channels, untouched by the political intrigue inside the palace walls. "Almost there," Lyra whispered, excitement and relief mixing in her voice. "We can reach the outer walls from here. After that, a human transport will be waiting. My father trusts your species enough to send you with the key to the shuttle." Elias' mind raced. Even here, with success so close, he knew caution was necessary. The factions' reach was long and their determination was fierce. One wrong move and their escape could fail. He positioned himself at the exit, scanning for signs of ambush, every muscle tense, every sense alert. Lyra followed, her hand brushing against his arm briefly. "I never thought a human could be so reliable," she admitted quietly. "In our world, strength is measured by control, by influence. You measure it by action and courage. It is different and yet effective." Elias smiled faintly. "We survive by adapting. That is our strength. Even if others underestimate us, it can give us an advantage." Together, they emerged from the hidden chamber and into the gardens. The air was cool and fragrant, a stark contrast to the tense corridors inside. They moved quickly but cautiously, sticking to shadows and avoiding the main pathways. The glowing plants cast soft light, illuminating their path just enough to navigate safely. Elias noticed the beauty of the gardens, but there was no time to admire it. They needed to reach the outer walls, and every second counted. The faction was still searching, and the palace was vast, its corridors and surveillance networks designed to detect any intruder. They reached a small alcove near the outer walls, where the human transport was hidden. A sleek shuttle, small but fast, waited silently. Elias felt a surge of relief, but he remained vigilant. Lyra stepped inside first, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any threat. He followed, closing the door carefully behind him. Once inside, Elias took the pilot's seat, familiarizing himself with the controls. Though the technology was alien, human ingenuity allowed him to understand the basic mechanics quickly. Lyra sat beside him, her expression a mix of admiration and curiosity. "Do you always adapt this quickly?" she asked. Elias shrugged. "When survival is on the line, adaptation is the only option. Humans are good at thinking on the spot, using what we have to solve problems. It's not about strength or power. Sometimes it's just about thinking faster and trusting instincts." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "I can see why my father entrusted this to you. Perhaps humans are underestimated in ways that can be valuable." Elias started the shuttle, the hum of the engines blending with the ambient energy fields around them. The faction might have tracked them, but he knew that humans' unpredictability could again work in their favor. He plotted a course through the garden tunnels, taking paths that seemed least likely to be observed. The shuttle lifted smoothly, gliding through the air above the gardens. Elias' heart pounded with anticipation, yet he felt a steadying confidence. Every maneuver had been calculated, yet flexible, allowing for rapid changes if the faction attempted an interception. Lyra leaned back, her posture relaxing for the first time since the throne room. "I owe you my life," she said quietly. "Not many could have done what you just did." Elias shook his head. We did it together. You guided me and I followed. Trust is a powerful thing, even more than weapons or strategy. The gardens disappeared below them, replaced by the vast cityscape of the capital. Lights shimmered, energy fields pulsed, and the palace loomed in the distance, a fortress of politics, intrigue, and danger. Elias knew they had escaped immediate threat, but the challenges were far from over. Lyra turned to him, a small, sincere smile on her face. Humans, perhaps we have underestimated your kind. Perhaps it is time we reconsider how we view your species. Elias met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. In that moment, he understood that humanity's role in this galaxy was shifting. They were fragile in appearance, but capable of remarkable courage, adaptability, and strategy. And sometimes, that was enough to alter the course of history. As the shuttle moved toward a hidden landing zone outside the palace, Elias allowed himself a brief sense of triumph. They had survived the first phase, evaded the faction, and preserved the life of the princess. Yet he knew that this was only the beginning. Political intrigue, rival factions, and the unknown threats beyond the city still awaited, but Elias was ready. He was human, and humans had a unique power. The ability to face danger with courage, to adapt when rules and technology failed, and to protect those who trusted them, no matter the odds. And Princess Lyra, once so untouchable and distant, now depended on that very human quality. Together, they were more than a princess and an envoy. They were a team, bound by trust, courage, and the quiet strength that only humans could bring to a galaxy that often underestimated them. The shuttle hummed quietly as it glided over the outer walls of the palace grounds. The city below sparkled with alien lights, a vast network of towers, bridges, and floating platforms. Elias Carter kept his hand steady on the controls, scanning the skies for any signs of pursuit. Despite their escape from the palace, he knew the faction would not give up easily. They were determined, ruthless, and capable of strategies that were difficult to anticipate. Beside him, Princess Lyra remained calm, though her sharp eyes betrayed a mixture of relief and calculation. Elias could see the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, the burden of royalty, and the knowledge that betrayal had come from within her own family. She glanced at him briefly, and for the first time he noticed a subtle vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. "You've done well," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "Most humans would have faltered long before this point." Elias allowed himself a small smile, but he did not relax. "We're not safe yet. They could be tracking us or preparing ambushes along the route. Every second counts." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "There is a place we can go. It is old, almost forgotten by most of the palace. A safe house used in times of extreme threat. If we reach it, we can plan our next move without immediate danger." Elias felt a surge of hope. Even in the most tense situations, finding a moment of safety could make all the difference. "Lead the way," he said. His human instincts, honed over years of training and survival experiences, told him that trust in her guidance was their best chance of success. The shuttle descended toward a secluded area of the city, hidden beneath the shadows of larger towers. The landing pad was almost invisible from above, shielded by advanced cloaking technology. Lyra expertly guided Elias, communicating through subtle gestures and whispered instructions. The landing was smooth, and the shuttle touched down without a sound, disappearing among the shadows. Once on the ground, Elias and Lyra moved quickly, sticking to narrow pathways and low-lit corridors. The city's energy fields provided some cover, but they could not rely solely on technology. Elias' training reminded him that alertness, observation, and intuition were just as critical as any advanced defense system. After navigating a series of twisting alleys, they arrived at the entrance to the safe house. It was unremarkable, blending seamlessly with the surrounding buildings. Lyra placed her hand on a control panel, and a hidden door slid open silently. Inside, the space was surprisingly simple, a small living area, modest furnishings, and a single window overlooking the city. Lyra allowed herself a brief moment of relief, sinking into a chair. "This place has been untouched for decades," she said. "Few know it exists. It is safe, at least for now." Elias studied the room carefully, scanning for any signs of danger. Nothing appeared out of place, and yet he remained cautious. Experience had taught him that even the most secure locations could hold hidden threats. "We have a few minutes," he said. "Let's use them wisely." Lyra looked at him with a mix of curiosity and respect. "I never thought a human could move through the palace so effectively. Your instincts, your ability to adapt, it is remarkable." Elias shrugged modestly. "We survive by observing, by adapting, and by acting when necessary. Fear slows most humans, but focus can make all the difference." She nodded thoughtfully. "In my world, power is measured by control, influence, and loyalty. Strength comes from following protocol and expecting obedience. Your kind measures strength differently, and it is effective in ways I did not anticipate." Elias felt a quiet pride. It was one thing to survive, another to earn recognition from someone like Lyra, yet he knew that their safety was temporary. The faction would not stop searching, and the challenges ahead were far from over. Lyra stood and moved to the window, her gaze scanning the city. "The faction has grown bold," she said quietly. "They underestimate the loyalty humans can inspire. That is why I trust you." Elias followed her gaze. The city below was alive with energy, movement, and potential threats. Yet he also saw opportunities. The unpredictability of humans could disrupt even the most meticulously planned strategies of the Urundari. "We can use that to our advantage," he said. "They expect patterns, but humans are unpredictable. That unpredictability can buy us time and space." Lyra turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. "Perhaps humanity has more value in this galaxy than most would admit. You act with courage, but also with thought and care. That is rare." Elias studied her, recognizing the complexity of her position. She was not just a princess. She was a leader, a strategist, and someone who had survived betrayal and intrigue for years. Her trust was not given lightly, and it carried immense weight. "We need a plan," he said. "One that considers the faction, the palace, and the possibility of other threats. We cannot rely on luck alone." Lyra nodded, moving to a small table and spreading out a holographic map of the city. She pointed to key locations, explaining routes, patrols, and potential allies. Elias listened carefully, absorbing every detail. He noticed the patterns in her thinking, the way she considered contingencies, the way she balanced risk and opportunity. It was impressive, but he also saw gaps where human intuition could provide an advantage. "Here," he said, pointing to a narrow network of tunnels that were not marked on the map. "They might not expect movement through these passages. It's risky, but it could give us an edge." Lyra studied the suggestion, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "It is unconventional, but unconventional thinking is often necessary. Humans are resourceful. Perhaps this is our best option." They spent hours planning, refining their route, and considering contingencies. Elias' experience with unpredictable environments and quick decision-making complemented Lyra's deep knowledge of her city and palace. Together, they formed a strategy that leveraged both human adaptability and Urundari precision. As night fell, the city lights cast long shadows across the safe house. Elias felt a sense of calm amidst the tension. The plan was solid, the princess was safe for the moment, and their trust in each other had grown stronger. Yet he knew that the next phase would test every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of courage they possessed. Lyra turned to him, her expression serious. "Tomorrow we will move. The faction will not rest, and neither can we. But I believe in this plan, and I believe in you." Elias met her gaze, understanding the gravity of her words. "We will move carefully, stay alert, and adapt as needed. Humans have a way of turning unexpected situations to our advantage. We will use that. For a moment they stood in silence, the city alive below them, the palace far behind, and the future uncertain. Yet in that silence there was a bond forming, human and princess, allies in a galaxy that often underestimated them, united by trust, courage, and the quiet strength that only humans seem to possess. Lyra finally relaxed slightly, a rare moment of vulnerability. "I never thought I would feel safe with a human at my side," she admitted softly. "But perhaps there is more to your kind than we have been taught to believe." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "We are capable of more than most expect. Courage, adaptability, and trust, these are our strengths, and sometimes they are enough to change the course of events." They spent the rest of the night preparing, reviewing the plan, and resting in shifts. Elias remained vigilant, aware that even the safest locations could be compromised. Lyra, too, stayed alert, though she allowed herself brief moments of calm. The bond between them grew stronger, built on shared danger, trust, and the recognition of each other's strengths. As dawn approached, the city below glimmered in the soft light of the rising suns. Elias felt a quiet determination settle over him. The challenges ahead would be immense, but they were not insurmountable. Together, human ingenuity and Urundari knowledge could navigate the dangers that awaited. Lyra stood by the window, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "Tomorrow, we move," she said, her voice steady, confident. "And we will face whatever comes with courage and precision." Elias nodded. "We will, and we will do it together. Humans are resourceful, unpredictable, and capable of action when it matters most. That is something even the most advanced civilizations sometimes forget." In that moment, the safe house was more than just a refuge. It was a place of planning, trust, and quiet strength. And Elias knew that no matter what the faction or the palace threw at them, they had the qualities needed to survive, to adapt, and to triumph. As the first rays of sunlight touched the city, Elias and Lyra stood side by side, ready for the next phase of their journey. The palace, the faction, and the dangers of the city awaited, but they were prepared. Not because of weapons or technology, but because of courage, intelligence, and the bond that had formed between a human and an alien princess. And for the first time in days, Elias allowed himself a quiet thought. Perhaps humanity's place in this galaxy was just beginning to reveal itself. The morning air was crisp, as Elias Carter and Princess Lyra prepared to leave the safe house. The city below shimmered under the twin suns, casting long, golden reflections across the glass towers. The peaceful glow was deceptive. Danger still lingered in the shadows, and the faction that had sought to seize Lyra's life was still active. Every movement they made needed to be deliberate, careful, and precise. Elias checked the shuttle once more, running through the controls with methodical care. Humans had a habit of over-preparing when facing danger, and in this case, it was an advantage. The alien technology was complex, but his experience and quick learning allowed him to anticipate its behavior, adapt to its functions, and optimize their escape. Lyra observed him quietly, her sharp eyes scanning the streets below. There was admiration in her gaze, mixed with a practical understanding of the stakes. "You have a way of seeing possibilities others miss," she said softly. "Most humans would follow the obvious paths. You create paths where none exist." Elias allowed a faint smile but kept his attention on the shuttle. Humans survive by observing, adapting, and acting when necessary. Unpredictability is a strength when others rely too heavily on rules. Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "Then let us move quickly. The faction will soon realize we have escaped the palace proper, and they will be relentless." Together, they lifted off from the hidden landing site, gliding smoothly through the city. Elias maintained a steady course, using narrow alleys and energy fields as cover. Below, the faction's patrols were already searching, their sensors scanning for disturbances. Humans had a unique advantage in such situations: instinctive unpredictability. He maneuvered the shuttle in ways that the Urundari would not anticipate, taking advantage of his understanding of movement, shadow, and timing. Lyra's hand rested lightly on the console beside him, her eyes fixed on the patrols below. "They expect us to act within the predictable," she whispered. "Your unpredictability gives us space. Use it wisely." Elias adjusted their trajectory, moving through narrow gaps between towers. The shuttle responded to his commands, the alien technology integrating seamlessly with his human intuition. In the next moment, they had slipped past the initial patrols, moving toward the outskirts of the city. Hours passed as they navigated hidden passages, tunnels, and quiet streets. Elias' mind was sharp, analyzing each choice, each movement, and each potential threat. Lyra provided guidance, her knowledge of the city and the factions' likely strategies complementing his improvisation. Together, they created a combination of human ingenuity and alien precision that allowed them to stay ahead of pursuit. Finally, they reached the outskirts of the city, where the urban landscape gave way to wide plains dotted with strange alien flora. A prearranged transport awaited them, hidden beneath a low hill. Elias landed the shuttle smoothly, guiding Lyra out into the open. The transport was larger, capable of moving them safely beyond the immediate reach of the faction. Lyra exhaled softly, allowing herself a rare moment of relief. "We have made it this far," she said, "but the faction will continue to hunt. They will not give up easily." Elias nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "Then we continue moving. We cannot allow them time to regroup or plan. Humans are good at persistence and improvisation, qualities that can counter their planning." They boarded the transport, which hummed quietly as it lifted off. Below, the city receded into the distance, the palace still standing as a symbol of power, intrigue, and the threat they had just escaped. Elias felt a surge of satisfaction. They had survived the first phase, navigated dangerous corridors, and avoided lethal traps. Their trust in each other had grown, and it was a bond stronger than many alliances he had seen among humans or aliens. Lyra studied him quietly, her eyes reflecting both admiration and curiosity. "I underestimated humanity," she admitted. "I thought your species fragile, limited, and unprepared for complex situations. You have proven otherwise." Elias allowed himself a small, wry smile. "Humans are underestimated far too often. But courage, adaptability, and trust, those are things that cannot be measured by technology or tradition. Sometimes, that is enough to turn the tide." The transport moved swiftly over the plains, guided by a network of hidden sensors that had been coordinated by allies loyal to Lyra's father. Elias and Lyra monitored their surroundings, alert for any signs of ambush or pursuit. Every instinct was sharpened, every sense attuned to subtle changes in energy, light, and movement. As they approached a distant settlement, Elias began planning their next steps. The faction would not stop at the palace. They would attempt to trace their path, intercept communications, and cut off escape routes. He would need to stay several steps ahead, using unpredictability and human intuition to counter their strategies. Lyra observed him silently, her respect for his abilities growing with every decision. "You think ahead," she said softly. "Most Urundari plan meticulously but rarely consider the unexpected. Your human perspective is valuable." Elias nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement but keeping his focus on the mission. "Value comes from acting when necessary and adapting to circumstances. Humans survive that way. It is instinctual." The settlement below provided cover, resources, and allies. Lyra had arranged for safe passage through a network of contacts who respected her authority and were loyal to her cause. Elias guided the transport with careful precision, ensuring that they remained undetected until they reached the landing site. Once on the ground, they moved quickly through the settlement, blending with workers and travelers. Lyra led the way, navigating narrow alleys and hidden pathways. Elias followed closely, alert to any signs of the faction. The city was alive with movement, but human adaptability allowed him to remain unnoticed, moving with confidence and purpose. At the edge of the settlement, they reached a secluded area where a larger transport ship awaited. It was designed for speed, stealth, and long-range travel, ideal for evading any pursuit. Elias boarded first, checking every control and system. Lyra followed, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for threats. "Once we are aboard," she said, "we can leave the immediate danger behind, but we must remain cautious. The faction will continue to search and word of our escape may spread quickly." Elias nodded, taking a deep breath. "We will be prepared." Humans have a way of facing danger head-on, adapting, and finding solutions when others are trapped by protocol or expectation. The ship lifted off smoothly, disappearing into the sky as the settlement faded below. Elias piloted it carefully, choosing an indirect route to throw off any potential tracking. Lyra observed silently, her expression reflecting both relief and continued calculation. Hours passed as they traveled through uncharted space, the stars stretching out before them in endless patterns. Elias' focus never wavered. He monitored every system, every potential signal, and every anomaly. Lyra occasionally offered observations, suggesting routes, analyzing patterns, and providing insights based on her knowledge of the galaxy. Together, their combined skills created a synergy that few could match. Finally, as night fell across the alien skies, they reached a remote outpost where allies of Lyra's father awaited. The outpost was fortified, discreet, and strategically positioned. It offered safety, resources, and the ability to plan their next steps without immediate threat. Lyra exhaled, allowing herself a moment of relief. "We are safe for now," she said. "But this is only the beginning. The faction will not relent, and our next moves will determine much more than our own survival." Elias nodded, feeling a quiet determination settle over him. "We have survived the first phase. We have adapted, acted, and maintained our trust. Humans have a unique strength, the ability to face danger, improvise, and protect those who rely on us. That is our advantage." Lyra studied him, a faint smile crossing her face. "I have learned much from you. Humans may be underestimated, but courage, intelligence, and adaptability are qualities that even the most advanced civilizations sometimes overlook." Elias allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Then let us use those qualities to secure your safety, your people, and the future. We will face the faction together, with strategy, courage, and determination." For the first time in days, the tension between them eased slightly. They had escaped the immediate danger, survived the faction's initial pursuit, and established a safe position from which to plan. Yet both knew that the challenges ahead would be formidable. Political intrigue, shifting alliances, and the cunning of the faction meant that vigilance could never be abandoned. Lyra moved to the observation deck of the outpost, her eyes scanning the horizon. "The galaxy is vast," she said softly, "and filled with dangers, opportunities, and unknowns. But with your help, human, I believe we can face whatever comes." Elias joined her, feeling the weight of responsibility and possibility. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a reminder of the challenges, the alliances, and the adventures that awaited. "Humans are capable of more than most realize," he said. "Courage, adaptability, and trust can tip the balance even in situations where others seem unstoppable, and together we are stronger than we know." Lyra smiled faintly, her hand brushing against the railing. "Then let us move forward, human. The faction may think they have power, but they have underestimated us. That is their mistake." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of quiet resolve. They had survived, adapted, and proven their abilities. The princess had trusted him, and he had protected her. Now, with the stars before them and the galaxy full of challenges, they would continue, relying on courage, intelligence, and the bond that had formed between human and princess. As the outpost settled into quiet stability, Elias realized a profound truth. Humanity's strength was not just in technology, numbers, or force. It was in the ability to act with courage, adapt to danger, and inspire trust. And sometimes, that was enough to change the course of events across a galaxy that underestimated them. Princess Lyra glanced at him one last time that evening, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and determination. "You have shown me that humans are more than I imagined. Together we will face the challenges ahead." Elias smiled, a quiet sense of accomplishment and anticipation settling over him. "Then let us face them together. The galaxy is vast and we have much to do." For the first time since the threat began, there was a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. The faction might continue to hunt, the palace might seek control, but human ingenuity, courage, and the trust between Elias and Lyra would guide them. And in that moment, as the twin suns set over the distant horizon, Elias understood that the story of a human and an alien princess was only just beginning. A tale of courage, trust, and the quiet, unstoppable power of humanity in a galaxy that had underestimated them.